My name is Clara, and up until lately, I believed I understood everything. After 2 years of marriage, Tom and I were enjoying a lovely apartment in a pleasant area. Tom oversaw sales for a sports nutrition company, while I worked at an advertising firm. Both of us had solid careers. Our basic aim was to start a family after saving for a house. We shared one automobile and had a modest life. Tom would drop me off at work every morning and then proceed to his office. At night, I'd find my own way home. Though it wasn't always practical, we weren't going to give up. Next, Sarah, Tom's sister, and her 2 children paid a visit. She was a single mother whose spouse had perished in an automobile accident. My in-laws, Tom's parents, were quite protective of her. They sent her to stay with us because they were constantly concerned that she wouldn't feel alone. Tom was thrilled to see Sarah come. He assisted her with her baggage and remarked, "Isn't it great to have them here?" In an attempt to match his enthusiasm, I nodded. Sure, it'll be nice to spend time together. I found Tom's first devotion to Sarah and her children to be rather endearing. He engaged in play with the kids, listened to Sarah's concerns, and went above and above to ensure their comfort. Tom became more and more fixated on Sarah as the days went by. He began insisting that I prioritize her needs as well. "Clara, could you assist Sarah with the laundry for the kids?" Or, "Clara, how about you take Sarah shopping? She must unwind." After working so hard, I was worn out from having to satisfy Sarah's desire. Tom's statement, "Clara, Sarah's going through a tough time," was the tipping point. We must provide her with the utmost comfort during her stay. Could you please show us more tolerance? I was overcome with amazement as I gazed at him. "I'm trying, Tom, but I'm also exhausted." After a long day at work, I return home to prepare meals and clean up for everyone. I also require a break. He scowled, obviously not pleased with my answer. "Sarah is a single mother who requires our help. You ought to show more empathy." A pitiful sensation descended into my gut as I watched Tom worry over Sarah and her children. Something had changed, and I wasn't sure I would like where it was headed. This wasn't simply a visit anymore. Weeks passed, and Sarah made no indication that she was going to leave. I was psychologically and physically worn out. I would come home from a hard day at the advertising firm and make dinner for everyone and tidy up the mess. I was becoming tired of Tom's never-ending criticism. "Clara, Sarah isn't a fan of spicy cuisine. Can't you create anything different?" One evening, Tom voiced his complaints. I bit my tongue and resisted the need to cry. "I'm trying my hardest, Tom. You know, I'm exhausted too. Sarah is worn out from spending all day with the children and doesn't have time to cook." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. He fired back, "That's understood, but—" "Clara, no buts. We must help her." I gave a quiet nod, not want to incite any controversy. I truly did understand. Although Sarah was going through a difficult period on the emotional and physical levels, I had had enough of Tom's unjust criticism. I was eager for everything to return to normal. After dinner one evening, Tom dropped a bombshell on me as I was doing the dishes. Leaning on the counter, he said, "Clara, we need to talk." After drying my hands, I prepared myself. "What's going on?" He spoke with a tinge of eagerness. Sarah's thinking of looking for a job here in the city. I became motionless. Well, that wasn't expected. "Yes, isn't it fantastic?" But here's the point, he went on, oblivious to my unease. "I believe you ought to resign from your position and tend to the children at home." My hands lost control of the plate I was holding, causing it to clang in the sink. "How come? You must be kidding." Tom scowled. "I am, of course. Sarah has to go to work, and the kids need to be watched by someone. I was hearing things that I couldn't believe. Tom, I'm not leaving my work to look after the kids of anybody else. It isn't equitable. All right. Expecting Sarah to handle everything by herself is unfair, he yelled. Breathing deeply, I tried not to panic. All right, let's consider this. If Sarah is hired here, where did she intend to live? Sarah smiled as she entered the kitchen before Tom could respond. How come Tom didn't inform you? I intend to reside here. Naturally, with my beautiful brother. He is sympathetic and gets me. There is no brother I could ask for better. With my eyes demanding an answer, I fixed my gaze on Tom. He moved uneasily beneath my eyes. He said, Look, Ciara, can we talk about this later? Without making eye contact. No, Tom. We must discuss this right now. My voice wavering a little, I insisted. I'm not comfortable with the current setup. It's not possible for us to live together. This flat is too small for 5 people. Tom looked happy, as though he had just recalled something amazing. But honey, are you not seeing? This is fantastic. In any case, we were going to purchase a home. We now have even more motivation to get started sooner. There will be more than enough room for everyone. I was hearing things that I couldn't believe. That's not the point, Tom. We are unable to just. I was speaking when he interrupted, his focus already on something else. I apologize. Let's discuss later, Ciara. I said I would play with the kids. Without warning, he vanished from my life, leaving me speechless in the kitchen and feeling as though a vehicle had struck me. Everything was different after that day. Tom used the same justification every time he dropped me off at work. Sorry, babe, I'm really busy this morning. Much though I knew he was lying, I was unable to provide any evidence, so I was forced to commute alone every morning and evening, which made my already busy days much more stressful. One afternoon, I came home early from work, hoping to get a head start on dinner. Instead, I walked into chaos. Sarah was sprawled on the couch, eyes glued to some trashy reality show, while her kids ran wild. Sarah, I said, trying to keep my voice level, what's going on here? She barely glanced up. Oh, hi, Ciara. The kids were bored, so I let them play. I looked around in horror. The walls were covered in crayon scribbles. There were mysterious stains on the couch, and my beloved houseplants, the ones nurtured for years, were knocked over, soil spilling across the floor. This isn't planning, Sarah. This is destroying our home. I couldn't keep the frustration out of my voice. Sarah just shrugged, her eyes already back on the TV. They're just kids, Ciara. Lighten up. I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head. Sarah, I thought you were looking for a job. Have you had any luck? She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, I've sent my resume everywhere, but nothing good has come up yet. They all want too much work for too little pay. I'm not desperate, you know. I bit my tongue, holding back the retort that threatened to spill out. Of course she wasn't desperate. She had a free ride here with Tom and me footing the bill and doing all the work. That night, as Tom and I got ready for bed, I tried one more time to talk sense into him. Tom, we need to set some ground rules. Sarah can't just let the kids run wild like that, and she needs to start contributing to the household chores. Tom sighed, looking exasperated. Clara, Sarah's going through a tough time. Can't you cut her some slack? Slack? Tom, I've been cutting her slack for weeks. Our home is being destroyed. I'm doing all the work, and you're acting like I'm the unreasonable one here. Keep your voice down, Tom hissed. You'll wake everyone up. Look, I know it's not ideal, but it's family. We have to stick together. As I lay in bed that night, listening to Tom's soft snores, I couldn't help but wonder, when did I stop being part of this family? And more importantly, how much longer could I keep living like this? As days turned into weeks, the situation at home only worsened. Tom seemed oblivious to the chaos his sister and her kids were creating. Whenever I tried to establish some order or ask the kids to clean up after themselves, Sarah would run to Tom with complaints. I overheard her one evening, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I don't think Clara likes the children. She's always yelling at them, forcing them to clean. They're just kids, you know." I waited for Tom to defend me, to point out that basic tidiness wasn't child abuse. Instead, I heard him sigh heavily. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'll talk to her." That night, Tom confronted me in our bedroom. "Look at this place, Clara. It's a mess. If you can't keep it clean with the kids here, maybe." "Maybe what, Tom?" I challenged, already knowing where this was going. "Maybe you should consider quitting your job. If you were home full-time, you could keep the house in order without putting so much pressure on the kids." I laughed bitterly. So now it's child labor to ask kids to clean up after themselves. "Tom, do you hear yourself?" But he wasn't listening. He'd been pushing this agenda for weeks now, and I was exhausted from fighting it. "You know what, Tom? Fine. You want me to quit." I quit. His eyes widened in surprise. "Really? You mean it?" I nodded, a plan already forming in my mind. "Yep, I'll call work tomorrow and tell them." Tom's face broke into a wide grin. He hugged me tightly, not noticing how stiff I was in his embrace. "Oh, Clara, this is great. You'll see everything will be better now." The next day, I did call work, but not to quit. I spoke with my boss and explained that I needed to take a 3-month unpaid leave for family reasons. Thankfully, I'd recently trained an intern who could cover for me. My boss was understanding and approved my request. When I told Tom I'd quit, he beamed with pride, shooting a triumphant look at Sarah. "See, I told you Clara would come around. She understands the importance of family." As I watched them share their moment of victory, I felt like a stranger in my own home. But I reminded myself that this was temporary, 3 months. I'd given myself 3 months to see how this situation would play out, to see if Tom would realize the mistake he was making. The next morning, as Tom left for work, he kissed me on the cheek. "Have a great day at home, honey. I know you'll do a fantastic job." I forced a smile, waving as he drove away. Then I turned to face the mess that awaited me inside. Sarah was already on the couch, TV remote in hand, while her kids ran around, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. From the day I quit my job, my life transformed into an endless cycle of chores and childcare. I'd wake up at dawn, prepare breakfast for everyone, pack Tom's lunch, and then spend the rest of the day cleaning, cooking, and looking after Sarah's kids. Meanwhile, Sarah lived like she was on a perpetual vacation. Days blurred together in a haze of domestic duties. Sarah would swan out of the house, off to shop or meet friends for coffee, leaving her children in my care without so much as a backward glance. I'd watch her drive away in Tom's car while I was left stranded at home, juggling housework and childcare. Tom, for his part, seemed oblivious to the imbalance. He'd come home, kiss me on the cheek, and ask, "How was your day, honey?" As if I'd chosen this life, as if I was living my dream instead of his sister's. One evening, as I was serving dinner, a meal I'd spent hours preparing while Sarah napped, Tom made an announcement. "So Sarah's birthday is coming up next month," he said, grinning. "I've got something special planned." Sarah clapped her hands excitedly. "Ooh, do tell." Tom shook his head. "It's a surprise, but clear your schedule for the evening of the 15th. On the evening of Sarah's birthday, we all piled into Tom's car and headed to LeBlanc, the most expensive restaurant in town. It was the kind of place Tom and I used to dream about going for our anniversaries, but we always decided the money would be better spent on our house fund. Tom's parents were already there when we arrived, fawning over Sarah and barely acknowledging my existence. As we settled into our seats, I couldn't help but feel like an outsider looking in on this family celebration. Throughout the meal, the conversation revolved around Sarah, her struggles, her strength, her dreams. I sat quietly, pushing food around my plate, feeling increasingly invisible. After the main course, Tom stood up, gently tapping his glass for attention. "I'd like to make a toast to my incredible sister, Sarah. You've been through so much, and you handle it all with such grace. I'm in awe of your strength." Sarah beamed, soaking in the praise. Tom continued, "And to celebrate your birthday, I have a special surprise." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. For a split second, my heart leaped. Was this all an elaborate ruse? Was he actually going to surprise me with a gift to thank me for my sacrifices? But then he turned to Sarah and held out the box. "Sarah, you've mentioned how hard it is getting around with the kids," he said as he opened the box, revealing a set of car keys. "Happy birthday, sis. Your very own car, just like you've always wanted." The table erupted in applause and exclamations of delight. Sarah jumped up, hugging Tom tightly. "Oh my God, Tom, I can't believe it. You're the best brother ever." I sat there, frozen in shock. A car? He had bought her a car. My mind flashed back to all the times I had mentioned needing a second car, all the times Tom had said we couldn't afford it, that we needed to save for our house. "Tom," I said, trying to keep my tone even, "can I ask why you bought such an expensive gift for Sarah?" The table fell silent, all eyes turning to us. Tom's smile faltered slightly. "Well, Sarah needs a car. She has 2 kids, and it's hard for her to get them to the park or the doctor. Plus, she'll need it when she starts working soon." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What about me? I've been asking for a second car for months. Tom's expression hardened. "You're at home all day, CLARA. You don't need a car." The injustice of it all hit me like a physical blow. "How much did this car cost, Tom?" He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. $20,000. The room started to spin. $20,000? Where did you get that kind of money? Tom cleared his throat. "I took it from our joint account, but don't worry, I'll put it back as soon as I get my bonus at work." Something inside me snapped. "You took our savings without even discussing it with me. That was our house fund. Tom, I want you to return that money right now." "Clara," Tom's mother gasped, "how can you be so selfish? Your sister-in-law needs this car." But I was beyond caring about their opinions. Years of frustration poured out of me. Selfish? I've given up everything for this family. My job, my dreams, my identity. Tom's face was red with anger. "If you're going to be so greedy and inflexible, fine. I'll take out a loan and put the money back in our account. Happy now?" "No," I shouted, beyond caring about the scene we were causing. "I don't want you taking out a loan. I want you to sell the car and put our savings back where they belong." Sarah, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "See, Tom, I told you she was controlling. She's trying to make you henpecked." Tom's parents nodded in agreement. "Clara," his father said sternly, "you need to learn your place. Tom is the head of the household." I felt like I was drowning, surrounded by people who didn't see me as a person, just an accessory to their perfect family narrative. Tom stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "That's enough, Clara. You've ruined everyone's evening with your behavior. Don't you know how to act in public?" Tears stung my eyes. but I refused to let them fall. I stood up, grabbing my purse. "I'm leaving." "Good," Tom shouted, no longer caring about the other restaurant patrons staring at us. "Get out, you ungrateful freeloader. I'm the one who earns the money in this family, and you should be obeying me. Maybe if you got a job, you'd have a right to an opinion." His words hit me like physical blows. I wanted to scream that I hadn't actually quit my job, that I was on leave, but the words stuck in my throat. What was the point? They'd already made up their minds about who I was. As I walked out of the restaurant, I could hear Tom continuing his tirade. "She lives off my hard work and then has the audacity to question my decisions. Can you believe it?" The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, tears finally spilling over. I had never felt so humiliated, so angry, so done. I arrived at our apartment, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. The nanny looked up in surprise as I burst in, tear-stained and disheveled. I went to our bedroom and pulled out my suitcase. With mechanical movements, I began packing my clothes, toiletries, and a few precious mementos. I left a note for Tom, brief and to the point. "I'm staying at a hotel. Don't try to contact me." The hotel room was small and impersonal, but it felt like a sanctuary. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling the weight of expectations and disappointment crushing me. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying the evening's events in my mind. By morning, I knew what I had to do. As soon as the law offices opened, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. Sarah Garcia came highly recommended, known for her fair but firm approach. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, shaking my hand, "tell me what brings you here today." I poured out my story, the gradual erosion of my marriage, the financial betrayal, the public humiliation. Sarah listened attentively, taking notes. "Based on what you've told me," she said when I finished, "you have a strong case for divorce. Your husband's actions with the joint account are particularly concerning. Let's draft the initial paperwork." Over the next few days, I threw myself into creating a new life. I found a small apartment not far from my office. I called my boss and explained the situation, asking to end my leave early. She was understanding and welcomed me back with open arms. As I settled into my new routine, I hoped for an amicable divorce. I wasn't out for revenge. I just wanted what was fair. I suggested mediation to Tom, thinking it would be the quickest and least painful way to end things. "I'm not asking for much," I told him during our first session. "Just return the money you spent on Sarah's car, and we'll split the remaining joint account 50-50. Tom scoffed. "Return the money? That car was a gift to my sister. You're being ridiculous." The mediator tried to intervene, but it was clear Tom wasn't budging. After 3 fruitless sessions, I realized we'd have to go to court. The next few months were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and court appearances. Tom fought me every step of the way, painting me as a gold digger trying to rob his poor sister of her much-needed vehicle. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge made her ruling. The court finds that Mr. Johnson's use of joint funds to purchase a vehicle for his sister without the consent of his spouse was illegal. Mr. Johnson is ordered to reimburse Mrs. Johnson for half the value of the vehicle, as well as legal fees. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't about the money. It was about justice, about having my voice heard and my rights recognized. Tom's face was a mask of fury as we left the courthouse. "I hope you're happy," he spat. "You've gotten your pound of flesh, you greedy, petty woman." Over the next few weeks, Tom complied with the court order, transferring the money to my account. I later learned he'd had to take out a loan to cover it, but I couldn't bring myself to feel guilty. He'd made his choices, and now we both had to live with the consequences. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I had settled into a comfortable routine. My small apartment had become a haven filled with peace and the simple joys I'd forgotten during my tumultuous marriage. I'd rekindled old friendships, thrown myself into my work, and even started a small herb garden on my balcony. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard an unexpected knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I approached cautiously and peered through the peephole. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Tom standing there, looking disheveled and anxious. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the door. "Clara," Tom said, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He looked around my apartment, taking in the cozy, organized space. "You look good," he said softly. "The place looks nice." "Thanks," I replied, my guard up. "What brings you here, Tom?" He sank onto my couch, running his hands through his hair. I messed up, Clara. I see that now. I came to apologize and, well, to ask for your help." I sat in the armchair across from him, waiting silently for him to continue. "I lost my job," he blurted out. "The company downsized, and I was let go. I'm still paying off the loan for Sarah's car, and I'm barely making ends meet." "Sarah? She refuses to sell the car or get a job. Said she's not ready yet." A part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction at hearing this, but I pushed it aside. "I'm sorry to hear that, Tom, but I'm not sure how I can help." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "The apartment is a disaster. Sarah doesn't clean, and the kids are out of control. The landlord's threatening to evict us because of the noise and mess. I realize now that you were right about everything. Sarah's not just going through a rough patch. She's taking advantage, and I let her." I sat there, taking in his words. The vindication I felt was bittersweet. Yes, I had been right, but at what cost? "Clara," Tom said again, his voice faltering. "I know I'm not worthy, but I was hoping we could have a fresh start. I've got the lesson now. You are missed. I long for our reunion. We could make things right if you could assist us." I briefly felt as though I had returned to the early stages of our marriage, when we were still in love and had big plans for the future. But then I thought back to the humiliation, the betrayal, and the months I had spent feeling unimportant and invisible. I inhaled deeply. "Tom, I'm sorry you're going through a difficult time, and I appreciate your apology, but I have to go." His expression dimmed. "But I've changed, Clara." I gave a gentle shake of my head, saying, "I see clearly now. Tom, the truth is that I've also changed. The last several months have demonstrated to me my abilities and worth. Who's to say that if you deceived me once, you wouldn't do it again in a difficult situation?" "I wouldn't," he was adamant. "I've come to my senses." "Perhaps you have," I acknowledged, "but that doesn't alter the fact that I'm content right now. Being independent and able to make decisions without having to take my partner's opinion into consideration gave me a sense of freedom." Tom slouched his shoulders. "That's it then. We have no chance at all." I got up to indicate that we should stop talking. "I believe it's better if you leave. Tom, although I sincerely wish things improve for you, I cannot solve your concerns. You must take responsibility for your actions and stand on your own 2 feet." Gradually nodding, he stood up. He turned to face me one final time at the door. "Clara, I sincerely apologize for everything." Silently, I answered, "I know." "Tom, goodbye." I leaned against the door and exhaled deeply as I shut it behind him. A range of feelings raced through me. A deep sense of relief and liberation, a hint of schadenfreude at Tom's revenge, and melancholy for the hopes we'd once had.